St. John the Philosopher here. Avengers Endgame is the biggest superhero movie event of all time. The makers of the MCU have managed to successfully combine modern audiences' preference for bingeable, long-form storytelling with the good old-fashioned notion of movies as singular, big-budget spectacles. The result has been a series of massive films that, taken together, are narratively equivalent to a 10-year-long television series, with Endgame acting as the series finale. As such, it serves the dual purpose of bringing the overarching plot to a conclusion and providing a satisfying resolution to the development of the main characters we've been following from the beginning. This is where Endgame shines, as any teary-eyed viewer can attest, but I would argue that it's also the place where it has its greatest shortcoming. With a movie full of so much greatness, it feels weird to complain about anything, but it must be said that Endgame missed the landing with Thor, and I have an idea why. If you were keeping score during Endgame, every one of the original Avengers had a moment that brought their individual stories to a close. Hawkeye, the man out of his depth in a world full of gods and alien armies, but driven by a sense of duty and loyalty, finally feels free to go back to his simple life on a farm, far away from all of it. Black Widow, though flirting with the idea of creating something at least close to what Clint has, actually manages to wipe out all the red from her ledger with a heroic sacrifice. Hulk, who'd been struggling with reconciling himself to the other guy, not only manages to bring those two aspects of himself together, admittedly off camera, but he comes to terms with the lingering question of why the Hulk was created in the first place. Upon realizing that he was the only one of the Avengers who could have hoped to survive the gamma radiation from the stones while wielding the new Infinity Gauntlet, he remarked, "It's like I was made for this." Captain America, the eternal soldier, the supreme archetypal hero who has saved the day countless times, finally gets the girl. Iron Man, forged in the fires of a terrorist prison camp, dedicated himself to keeping people safe. And as the dangers escalated from the misuse of his technology around the world to interplanetary war to the universal threat of Thanos, that dedication was turned to all-consuming obsession. In his final act of snapping away that threat, he could at last rest in the knowledge that everyone was going to be alright without him. And then there's Thor, who got fat and stuff. Okay, look, I get what they were doing. In fact, I actually like most of what they did. The very first Thor movie was about taking away the things he cared for in order that he might grow into a better version of himself. Stripped of his godhood, he had to learn what it truly meant to be a leader and a hero. The Dark World furthered this, if not a bit clumsily, by killing Loki and his mother Frigga. Ragnarok did the best job stripping Thor down to his essence, even if the humor may have veered a little too far into the silly for me. The incantation on Mjolnir, while providing the impetus for Thor's growth journey, also created this false idea that his identity was indelibly tied to it. Its destruction forced Thor to reevaluate himself. While facing new challenges without it, and with a little help from his dad, Thor eventually rose to the challenge. Infinity War is where we see the toll all this has taken on him, in a scene that, in my opinion, perfectly balanced comedic Thor and dramatic Thor.
You sure you're up to this particular murder mission?
Absolutely. Rage and vengeance, anger, loss, regret, they're all tremendous motivators. They really clear the mind, so I'm good to go.
Yeah, but, I mean, this Thanos we're talking about, he's the toughest there is.
Well, he's never fought me.
Yeah, he has.
He's never fought me twice. And I'm getting a new hammer, don't forget.
Well, it better be some hammer.
You know, I'm 1,500 years old. I've killed twice as many enemies as that, and every one of them would have rather killed me, but none succeeded. I'm only alive because fate wants me alive. Thanos is just the latest in a long line of bastards, and he'll be the latest to feel my vengeance. Fate wills it so.
Mm-hmm. And what if you're wrong?
Well, if I'm wrong, then what more could I lose?
I could lose a lot. Me personally, I could lose a lot.
With his failure at the end of Infinity War and the apparent reality that the consequences of that failure could never be undone made clear at the beginning of Endgame, Thor understandably falls into depression and self-destruction. From there, Thor struggles with mild addiction and self-doubt, mostly played for laughs, until a pep talk from Mom and validation from Dad via Mjolnir's incantation helps him get back on track.
I'm still worthy.
Rolling into the third act, with all the stones collected and hope on the horizon, he's a lot like the old Thor, wanting to jump right into action, much more confident, ready to wear the gauntlet, which may well kill him, if it means erasing the fruit of his previous failure. So when Thanos shows up and Thor strides into battle with both Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, I was incredibly disappointed that he was summarily beaten up and basically became a non-entity for the rest of the film. I get that they want to set up Thor for future adventures and need to leave more room for character development, but they missed a major opportunity to at least give him some measure of closure. There are two juxtaposed ideas that are a must in this type of heroic storytelling. The bad guys get their comeuppance as poetically and ironically as possible. The duster becomes the dusty, am I right? And the good guys get the win in equally poetic fashion.
I am Iron Man.
Thor didn't get that. They nerfed him, beat him up, and tossed him aside for the finale, and I think that's a shame. So in the spirit of one of my favorite movie YouTubers, Nando V Movies, if I were to change one thing about Avengers Endgame, it would be to get rid of Captain Marvel and give Thor the storyline he deserved. For the most part, the purpose of this change is to impact the final battle, but without Carol, we do need to figure out a way to retrieve Tony and Nebula from their derelict spaceship. But this isn't a hard problem to solve. True, Thor can't fly through space, though we've seen that he can survive it. But we also know that he has Stormbreaker now, which can summon the Bifrost. You remember the Bifrost, right? It's an Einstein-Rosen bridge connecting 2 points in space, allowing near instantaneous travel between worlds. Yeah, Thor can do that. At will. This will be important later, by the way. So Thor and Rocket could easily Bifrost over to a planet and acquire a ship. Rocket is really good at stealing things, and with half of the universe gone, there are bound to be a dearth of ships just hanging around out there. Rocket uses his awesome tech skills and knowledge of the Benatar to track its location, and boom, Iron Man and Nebula are saved. Now we come to the final battle, and I'd make a few changes there too. Remember this guy? And this guy? I'm all for the last 5 years of lethargy having an impact on his performance, but Thor needs to do a bit more damage during that initial fight with him, Iron Man, and Captain America triple teaming Thanos. I mean, Thanos barely got dirty. I wanted him to bleed, at least a little. Anyway, fast forward a bit. The battle rages. Scarlet Witch is handling her business with Thanos when the Mad Titan calls down a bombardment on the entire battlefield from his flagship, Sanctuary 2. Thor sees his allies ground to a standstill under the barrage. He sees Spider-Man with the gauntlet in serious trouble from the cannon fire. He has two choices. Take the gauntlet, wield it as a hero, and save the universe, passing into glory and legend in doing so. Or do his part as a team member, clearing the way for everyone else. The ship's cannons stop, and then turn. Not upwards, but concentrating fire to their left flank, where we see Thor flying up towards the ship like a rocket, shrugging off the energy blast. Sanctuary 2 shudders as he breaks through the underside of the ship and lands on top, dead center of that part that looks like a big head. He raises Stormbreaker to a sky that grows dark with clouds. 1,000 bolts of lightning strike him, electricity arcs everywhere, and then a hole appears in the sky as the rainbow colors of the Bifrost beam onto him. If you remember, Loki's plan in the first Thor was to use the Bifrost projector on Asgard as a weapon of mass destruction. Thor has that kind of destructive force at his disposal. A tornado of power surrounds him, reaching up to the heavens. It's like nothing we've ever seen from him before. Staring down at Thanos, he shouts, "For Odin, for Frigga, and for Asgard," and channeling every ounce of rage and grief and loss he has inside him. Thor strikes with Stormbreaker and tears the ship in half. The shockwave knocks everyone to the ground, and Thor lands on the edge of the water, spent. He's given his all, and so he leaves it to the rest of the team to finish the job. As for the part Captain Marvel plays in creating that A-Force moment when all the female Avengers gather for an epic hero shot, I think the aforementioned Nando has a great way to fix that as well. Link is in the description. Okay, so we fixed Thor's story in Endgame. But in trying to understand why it needed fixing in the first place, I can't help but stumble into modern gender politics in media. Let me explain. At a time when the thought leaders and tastemakers in the entertainment industry are pushing for more female-led properties, Marvel Comics in general has a problem in that it does not have an equivalent to Wonder Woman, a singular female hero who stands completely on her own and is therefore ripe for her own film adaptation. Marvel's staple of extremely popular and well-liked female characters are all generally part of teams like Black Widow and Storm, or they're derivatives and partnered with male heroes like She-Hulk and Wasp. So I get that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is itching to present their own female hero that can stand with the likes of DC's iconic powerhouse. The problem, of course, is that we're talking about the entertainment industry, which is arguably the business most sensitive to often unpredictable customer preferences. Most of the time, you put your best forward, hope the audience responds, and then give them more of what they seem to want. What Marvel appears to be doing is pushing Captain Marvel onto the audience and demanding that we like her, and I think they sacrificed aspects of the story in order to do so.
I like this one.
I'll have to do a separate video on why exactly I'm not a big fan of this iteration of Captain Marvel, since this video has gone on way longer than usual. But lover or hater, you'd be hard-pressed to find a decent reason why so much of Endgame's dramatic and narrative energy was allowed to be siphoned off by someone who apparently doesn't need it. Tell me what you think of this video. What do you think about how Endgame treated Thor, and what I propose to fix it? What would you have done differently in Endgame? Discuss in the comments. In the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more videos on religion, culture, and politics. That's all for today. This is St. John the Philosopher. Goodbye, God bless, and I'll see you in another video.